I had to fire 90% of our production team because they were starting a competing business while still working for me and taking on clients and doing work from within the walls of our office.
Welcome to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. I'm David Gilliland with Elite Entrepreneurs. I'm hosting this today. I am delighted to have AJ and Mike with us from Agency Coach. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Hey, thanks so much, David.
Yeah, I was super excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
You guys have done some great things and have been impacting a lot of businesses along the way. Why don't you just tell us the 30-second version of what got you here
All
and
right.
what you're
So
doing?
for sure. So 2003, which is a land before mobile smartphones, before Google was the top search engine, before YouTube, before Facebook, I started a web design company here in Tucson, Arizona. It was an excuse to stay here because I was dating a girl who'd become my wife. I was playing in a band, but the prospects for a guy who knew how to build websites in 2003 here in the desert were very minimal. So my best and really only option was to start a web design company, which I did at the kind of support and direction of my dad. He gave me a lot of encouragement to do that. And fast forward to years later, today it's a team of 20 folks who build we've built thousands of websites, hundreds of digital marketing campaigns for just about every type of business that you could imagine. But in 2015, we kind of felt like we'd slayed a lot of the dragons that we had like achieved business ownership and it was working and money was coming in, and so we started to get the wandering eye of like what was the next thing. And that's when we kind of got introduced to the world of sales funnels and online marketing and online businesses through a guy I think a lot of people know, Russell Brunson of ClickFunnels, who's built $100 million business, bootstrapped it from nothing in a pretty short amount of time. So we kind of like knocked on his door and started hanging around him, and he taught us a couple things that we've then deployed into the business we are mainly focused on today, which is Agency Coach.
Very nice. And Mike or AJ, why don't you just tell us Agency Coach and what you do?
Yeah, so for Agency Coach, we're really trying to provide agencies around the world with the shortcuts that we didn't have. Mike and I have always been guys that invest in coaching, invest in mentorship, but it was always with people that were like general business guys, right? So we'd have to take kind of their advice and figure out how the heck do we apply that to what we do and translate that. And it's really cool with Agency Coach to be able to give the people that are our world, like things they can just rubber stamp, right? This is already proven. It already works. Just put this into your business and it's going to work for you too. And so that's what's really, really, really cool about it. We help people with things like generating leads, closing sales, service delivery, while still making money, right? Being able to delegate things and really trying to help agency owners get to the point where they own an agency. They don't just own their own job.
I love that. I mean, you guys haven't just learned nuggets since passing your $1 million mark. You've now packaged it and are sharing them actively with other people. But within your own business, what are some of the things, the lessons learned that you look back to and you're like, that one was so key for us. That one made all the difference.
Yeah, I'd say probably the big one. I don't know if you're thinking the same one as me right now, but recurring revenue for us. It used to be when I first started, I thought that business is just one of these things where, okay, you have times that are good and times that are bad, and that's just the way it is. And it's also known as the feast or famine business cycle, right? Periods of time where you got cash and projects coming in, followed by periods of time where you don't know where the next project is coming from. And I just kind of thought that, man, this is part of the game and I'm just going to play it this way. But it's really tough. Like, what was really hard is the point where I actually started to have a team in place, and I was looking at payroll every 2 weeks and wondering what the heck I was going to do and how it was going to work.
Yeah, that's
And
real.
and it's like, I'm like, how many times can I do this and not fail? Right? It's like I have to play like I've never bowled a perfect game of bowling, but there's people out there who've done it, and like every single roll of the bowling ball down the alley, you've got to get it just right. Otherwise, you don't bowl a perfect game. And I felt like I'm like, I have to bowl a perfect game when it comes to making and meeting payroll. Like I can't fail at that. And it's like every payroll became the next like moment where I was wondering if the next one was going to be the one that it wasn't going to work. And it just kind of got inside of my head. And it really came down to lessons around how do you build cash flow in a recurring way that wasn't just us going out and eating, killing and eating every time we brought on some new project.
Yeah, I think the way that we got to $1 million in 1 year, our very first time, was probably through brunt force. It was super hard, right? We had very little recurring revenue. We were going out there and trying to get these big projects and one-time projects, and we did it the hard way, right? It was always like starting back at zero on the first day of the month and having to go out there and get it over and over again. And there was one time where we had sold the biggest site I ever sold, which is like a 6-figure website to a local casino here. And Mike and I are like high-fiving. We're like, cool, cash flow, issues are over. We're never going to have to worry about that again. And, just a few months later, we're sitting there like, again, looking at the account saying, darn, payroll's coming in. Where did all that money go, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I went to our accountant and I said, Nancy, what the heck happened? Like, we got more money from that one project in that month than we've ever had in any other project. And just a few months later, we're right back to the same spot that we were. Like, where that money just vanished or what? And she ran a report for us that really just transformed our lives. And it was a report of our top 20 clients over the last 5 years. And I was wholeheartedly expecting Casino del Sol to be number one on that list, right? And it wasn't. It was like number 19. And I looked at the top of the list, and guess what? It was an orthodontist who was paying us $2,000 a month, but for the past 5 years, an HVAC company that was paying us $2,000 for the last 5 years, a dentist that was doing that. And I started to realize, like, geez, we hadn't even been focused on those people, right? We'd been going after the big whales and the big projects and trying to get a big cash grab. And those weren't even the ones that were making a meaningful difference. And it was in that moment that we realized, like, one, I felt super happy because guess what? There wasn't another casino I could go sell. It's not like I'm going to get another 6-figure website in my pipeline anytime soon, but there was a lot of orthodontists. There was a lot of dentists. There was a lot of, these home services companies that were the ones that were moving the needle for us. And we shifted all of our focus to that. And just over a year, I think we transformed it to where all of our payroll, all of our expenses were paid through recurring revenue. So at the beginning of the month, we didn't have to go out there and sell anything, right? And that is how you get nights that you can sleep, right? That's when you can work on the things you want to work on instead of having to come up with these Hail Mary campaigns. That's when you get to take time off and not worry about things. That's when you get to make investments in people or in equipment or in office, any of those things, and know that you're okay, right? And it's just a way better spot to be in. And so that's definitely one of the primary things that we aim to teach people that are in our world very early on.
No, I love that. And I mean, it's so common that it's actually right around that stage of $1 million to 2 million when, if we take the time to just stop and look at the numbers and start to say, now, wait a second, we might have felt a big ego boost with certain things.
Right.
Or we might have loved going after these other, every closed deal is a high, but there were some that really have impact, both for us and for them. They love it and we love it, right? And then finding those. And for another, one of our listeners, it may be the big jobs that's where they do the best, and they're just designed to pull those off really well over and over again to so many people, and the word of mouth and whatever it does great. But that wasn't your design. You found yours. You're like, we're set for this group. They're slow and steady. They're consistent businesses. They need constant eyes in order to help their businesses grow. And we're good at bringing those eyes every month over and over, right? Such a key thing. And then did you change your sales process? You kind of stopped hunting wells and instead like, no, I'm gonna own Main Street. Forget Wall Street. I want Main Street.
Yeah, 100%. Like, the first thing that we did was we had to change some of our beliefs, right? Because our original belief was that people that came into our world, they needed to start with a website, right? And then we would do some digital marketing or some other strategies to help them get more traffic. But oftentimes that was just kind of our ego, right? We saw their website and we knew we could build a better one, but like, was it really that much better, right? Or could we just automatically move into helping them with things like SEO or pay-per-click or Facebook ads or any of those things? And so first part was just understanding that, man, if their site's good enough, then I could skip that and move to the recurring revenue stuff that I want to focus on and that's going to move the needle for us. And then the second thing was just, we did change our entire sales process so that, it's a consultative process where we obviously evaluate kind of their online footprint or online presence, identify where there's gaps and opportunities, and then provide them with recommendations. I'll tell you what, that proposal very much leans toward recurring revenue services that we want to sell instead of one-time type projects. And
Nice.
that's what really moved the needle so quickly for us is we went out there and we recommended what we knew would help them and help us, right?
That's fantastic. It does. Once we get that focus, it changes all the processes. Everything changes around it, and they begin to optimize around where can we really win.
Yeah.
And that's
And
something you guys
the
picked up.
truth was that the websites were the most resource intensive thing that we were doing. It required the most people on our staff, whereas the digital marketing stuff, that was the stuff that we had repeatable processes, and there wasn't these like snowflake projects. It was things that we could do over and over again very simply. And, we could have one person that's managing a lot of work. Whereas with the other side of things, it was just always, we had to throw a huge amount of man hours at it in order to get that done.
Cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
Great insight. Any other nuggets? Any other things you're like, I didn't really expect that to come along? And this may be something that's well outside of what you do for your clients today, but you learned internally, like this made a difference for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I say this often. It's like if you would have told me that of all the trials and tribulations and issues that we would have had going into business, I feel like on day one, you're like, Mike, here's what you're signing up for. Here are the things. I don't know that I would have had the guts to do that. And like one of those categories, I think, of things is just understanding people and bringing people in and how that worked. Now, I think it's interesting today because especially if you have like an online or digital business, right now, here we are in different parts of the world, able to have this conversation. Back in 2003, it very much was face to face, and hiring people also was a face to face prospect, right? Like, I also needed to find people here in Tucson, Arizona, that could do the thing that I was asking them to do. I think there's such an advantage that businesses have today many don't realize. I mean, I feel like sound like the old guy saying this, but it's like, yeah, it was so hard back then. Now you can just hire someone for one small thing, right? For the thing that you need to get done, right? You don't need to hire a full-time resource if you don't need it. You can hire someone just to swing the hammer for the one piece that you need, and they're all available and accessible online. And I think that that's really cool. But the story or the lesson in that was that hiring people is a very intentional skill, and I very much underestimated that. And I think the best example of that was there was a point in time where I had to fire 90% of our production team because they were starting a competing business while still working for me and taking on clients and doing work from within the walls of our office, right? So you got to ask the question, like, how does it get that bad?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Like, who did I bring in
point,
here?
right? Like, what sequence of events happened to the point where that was the end of the story or end of that culmination of things? And the truth is like, I created that environment. I created that situation. And there was, looking back, there was 1,000 little taps and things where I should have done something differently. And at the time, if you asked me in that day and the weeks and the months and the years, even after that happened, was whose fault was it? Like, it wasn't, not my fault, right? It was them, these evil people, right? But truthfully, like now looking back, the benefit of time and taking a look at that lesson, yeah, I created an environment where that was possible and fostered that to the point where it got so bad. And so, I think that is a kind of a huge lesson in, bringing the right people, being the right kind of leader, and being really clear about that, and having boundaries and having standards and all the things which I kind of either didn't know about. I could claim ignorance for a little while, but like some of those things was just, it was beyond ignorance. It was like I just let it happen despite all that.
Yeah, and I think that actually led to a pretty big moment for us, which was like we had to basically fire 90% of our team, right? And that left me, Mike, and maybe one or two other people with all this work, all this project. And honestly, we weren't the guys that could even do that stuff anymore. Like we'd been out of it for so long. And so we needed to go out there and find additional help and resources. And we didn't look locally for that because that would take too long. And we were able to find people that could fit little bits and pieces of it, right? We weren't finding one person that's like the digital marketer guy. We were finding one guy that could do keyword research, one guy that could help with pay-per-click ads, one guy that could help with Facebook ads. And what that allowed us to realize is that we've been playing the game wrong for a long time. The way we did it was, You remember the show Mad Men? They had that huge building and all these employees, and Mike and I were like, yeah, one day we're gonna have this like high rise and all hundreds and hundreds of employees. And once you start getting to 20, 30 employees, you're like, gosh, I don't want that. There's no way I don't want that at all anymore. And we used to just throw bodies at it, right? Whenever we get busier, we'd go out there and hire a full-time resource. And it's not like the moment you hire someone, you have double the revenue, right? It's like, no, now you've taken that revenue and now you have double the expense in order to get that done. And it takes a while to catch up, right? And capacity is like one of the biggest killers of margin ever. And we're constantly playing that game, right? Where we're throwing no more bodies at it, and that would eat into our margin, throw bodies at it, eat into our margin. And we started to realize that that's not the way to play, right? The way to play is to find the people that could do things when you need it, right? And so I'm only paying somebody when I just got paid. And it's for this one small thing, and they're happy to do it because they're not worried about their going out there selling and doing all these other things. And that completely fixed our margin issues and capacity issues and all those other things, and started to create a very predictable profit margin on every single thing that we sold. And that cleaned up a lot of stuff too. So we call that the leverage service model. That's what we kind of.
So let me pull a couple nuggets out of there. I mean, one, we've got the leverage service model. And how do we use people when we need to use them? They love it. We love it. And then the other is we still have some needs for some full-time employees. And so can I learn the hard skills of doing the soft stuff? Right? Yeah. That really hiring well, that really training them up right, the building the environment, the culture, the support, to where I've got loyalty instead of like turncoats on me, right?
Yeah.
Right through this process. And two really important things. I really appreciate you sharing those. And I think many of us don't actually do the leveraged service model as well as we could. So great things you guys are out there sharing with others. Thank you so much. Things for us to think about. I know what the big boys, like really large firms, global, international kinds of ones, that several of them have the model of we'll hire for 80% of our work, and 20% we always use contractors.
Right.
Then the fluctuation can happen in the contractors, and my steady base can be what it is and grow them. Then when I get enough work that it's now like, hey, we've got 24% are contractors, I can hire another in there, right? I'm going to hire enough to get it back to that 20% thing. But now I can get full-time hires in because I see the predictability of my sales and the ability to meet that payroll demand that we talked about earlier, right?
That's just it. We like to focus our full-time employees on people that are customer facing, right? Because those are the ones that are representing our company and being the face of our brand. And it's important for that to still be in-house. But like what happens after that is like, how we deal with it, right?
We just need great project management.
Exactly.
Great project
management.
Like
a general contractor that's building a home, he's not doing the roofing and the electrical and the plumbing. He's finding the people that are the experts in those things and bringing them in and making sure that they're getting all that work done.
Yeah. Well, great model, great example. Thank you again for sharing with us. Now you're at your next stage, your next thing. What are the two of you looking at? What is your new challenge that you're facing or opportunity you're looking at leveraging? What are you hoping for? And then maybe I can be of some help.
Of course, yeah. So I think, we've got this business, our agency that's doing well. 4 years ago, we handed it over to our leadership team, and kind of the rule of thumb was if they're growing and there's like not something crazy different about, like if they're going to get into like underwater basket weaving or something, we might step in and be like, are you sure that's in alignment? But they've been growing successfully, and we're just really proud of them and the work that they're doing. And I think inside of our coaching business, AJ and I have had the opportunity to kind of relearn some of the lessons that we recreated or that we learned in the original business. I would like to think we're smart enough not to make the same mistake twice, but there's been times where we've oh yeah, that's what we learned over here. And I feel like we're constantly
did it again.
identifying ways in which we are bringing things over. We're very proud of the work that we've done. I think where we're at today, though, is like AJ and I are very much, inside the day-to-day operations of this coaching business, and in a way that we were able to remove ourselves from in the agency side of things. And it took, as we were sharing before the call, the pandemic was the moment where I called up AJ. We were all working from home. And I was actually working from the camper that's parked in my driveway before we built this studio. And I said to him, I'm done. Let's sell it. And he's like, whoa, slow your roll. What's wrong? I'm like, I don't want to do the agency anymore. Like I feel like I'm ready to focus fully on the coaching stuff. And his suggestion was, why don't we put a CEO in? And we did. We promoted from within someone who's been with us for a long time, and she's been doing an amazing job with the folks around her. And I think it was 100% the right choice. But it took the pandemic of like in this. I don't honestly remember what happened that day. I really wish I remembered what was the final straw where I called him up and was like, "That's it." And honestly, it probably wasn't anything that anyone would find particularly interesting.
No, your shoelace probably broke, and you're like,
Something
"That's it,
very
I'm
simple,
done." Right?
Very simple. But it's like, I think from pretty early on, I knew that I wanted that business to run without me. A business coach I was working with recommended a book. I think it was like Susan Carter. It's like How to Make Your Business Work Without You. That could be the wrong author. And I was telling AJ the other day, I'm like, I honestly don't think I ever finished that book, but it sit on my shelf for years.
The title was perfect. That's all you needed.
Yeah. I just needed the title to know it was possible, which is funny. So I knew that was possible, and I think in this business, because it is very much our faces and our ideas, and like what's funny is like kind of quick side story. Before we started this business, we joined a coaching program with a guy named Ryan Dice. Ryan's the head of a company called Digital Marketer in Austin, Texas. Really smart guy, and we joined one of his programs, and we were thinking about starting this kind of business. And he said to us, he's like, Mike, AJ, you don't want to do that. And I'm like, I mean, we're pretty coachable guys. So like, you figure I just pay this guy a bunch of money to get his opinion. And he's like telling me not to do this thing. And we actually followed his advice. We went off another tangent, and that's a great story for another day of how we blew things up in a really bad, negative way. And, but we ultimately came back this way. Right. But what he was telling me then was, and I'm sure he's moved beyond this and he's figured out for himself. He's a very successful guy, that he was the face of that business, and every conference and everything that business did required him to be at his best, on his best, and be, it was kind of like bowling a perfect. It feels actually, now that I'm thinking about it and putting it together, it does feel like the bowling the perfect game every time. Like I better roll strikes every single time, otherwise like stuff falls apart. And so where we're at now is figuring out, that being said, like, so we've learned the lesson of recurring revenue. We've got recurring revenue when it comes to coaching business and clients and software sales and things like that. But it's like I think a lot of business in our position, it's like it's never where we want it to be. So we can feel like we did it, and it's also hard to figure out how to extract ourselves from or at least I'm speaking for me, and maybe AJ can share his different perspective. It's challenging to see at times how I extract myself and have a business that can affect people, affect change in a positive way without me being there. And I think it's foolish just to think that like it can't be done. Like I know that, but it's just like from where the vantage point where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's how it feels right now, is that, we definitely go out there and we're like, hey, we're two agency owners that went out there and did this and built this agency that can run without us and does all this recurring revenue. And we want to show you how to do the same. But then like them get in and be like, and now talk to this guy who's not a owner and hasn't done those things, and he's going to be your coach. You know what I mean? That's where it feels like a little bit weird. And I don't know if we're the ones that are saying that story and feel like, well, they're going to cancel if they're not working directly with us, or if it's really driven by the way that we're presenting this,
Yeah. So let's get the question, because I want to make sure I get it
I think
right.
the question is, we feel like with our agency coach business, we need to be the ones that are providing the coaching, being the face, doing the weekly coaching calls, doing one-on-one calls when something goes wrong with one of our, mastermind members. And we feel like we have a job, right? Like I can't skip a week because I've got a Tuesday sales call that people hop on and ask questions. And how do I start to pull myself out of that without getting all of our students mad?
And I know you're going to jump in here, David. I'll just layer one thing on top of that too. It's like, with respect to our agency, we very much feel like business owners and entrepreneurs. And I think both of us have aspirations to be involved in businesses and bring our knowledge and perspective and leadership in a way that doesn't also require our like hands-on doing of the thing. We've got lots of amazing friends that we've seen done this, that they they are able to touch and work with businesses or invest in businesses in ways that doesn't mean that just because you're associated with it that they are like doing the work. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
and I think we have that in one business, but this one, we bootstrap this one up, and we're very much like we've got the shovels in hands, and I'm not complaining, right? Just to be clear, like I love it. I love what we're doing, but I also know that there is more for us out there.
Yeah. Um, and it's that draw of more for us out there or something more, some greater impact we need to have that says, I can't be stuck in this work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have something more I have to do. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
because what's interesting is, there was a period of time in our agency where I kind of had that. I was like, there was nothing anybody really needed me for, and it was actually a very weird feeling because I'd handed off production, I'd handed off accounting, I'd handed off sales. AJ was leading the sales charge, and like, I actually would come in some days and I'd say to him like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do today, right? And he's like, we got it, right? And it was just a very unsettling feeling, and that's actually what led to the birth of agency coach and what we're doing now. And so I had this period of time where it's like I was like that like exploratory ship that got jettisoned out to go like figure out here's the thing, here's what's coming, here's the thing we're gonna do. And like, because he didn't have time for it exactly, like he had little bits of time and we talked a lot, and but I had like a lot of time to do that. And I feel like is that a model to go figure that out again? And it's just
Okay. So let's play with it. One, it is a model to figure it out again. And here's why. In the way we contribute inside of a business or in any kind of organization out there, you start off learning, figure right, and it's actually that's the shovel in hand. You're just trying to figure it out, right? And then you become a true contributor, individual contributor who's knocking it out of the ballpark. That's what you're doing in this business when you're
Mm-hmm.
coaching, when you're speaking, right? You're doing individual contributor work and your clients love you.
Mm-hmm.
The next shift, of course, is to add value through others. And how do I help 10 people do what I used to do times 10, right? Times more than that. And I get to a role that I can see how to make everyone 30% more efficient or effective. And so that work is now worth a lot, right? it's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not $200 an hour, it's $2,000 an hour, right? There's a multiple effect in the work that I'm doing. Then there's one more step, which is a leader of leaders, and you just talked about that in your agency work, where the day-to-day actually doesn't need you at all,
Mm-hmm.
but what is needed in that leader of leaders, and it's an important step, and if no one's doing it, this is what happens to the business. Like, you go off a cliff. There's nobody seeing the long-term vision. There's no one championing that vision to the end or building a system around that. There's very few who are sponsoring new leaders to bubble up to lead things, who are thinking about the next opportunity or key relationship, affiliation, whatever partnership that if we built, we could 3, 5, 10x what we've got right now and really do some powerful things, because you can't. You were in the trenches leading or doing. Right. So leader of leader has this new job, direction setting, building future leaders, knowing that the growth of the business is dependent on how effectively we can and predictably build new leaders to build new teams to grow, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how they work together. And so it is a natural progression. I just like that instead of waiting for a pandemic and that shoestring to break or whatever it was that pushed you over the edge, that you're looking at, you're saying, I need to go there. I need to think about it. And you're in this unique position where you're the brand. Mike
Mm-hmm.
and AJ are the brand.
Mm-hmm.
And and then how do we extract from that? Because most in our industry, meaning in the consulting space where we're bringing business expertise, we've done it ourselves. We've helped hundreds of others do it. Most of them are putting their face forward and say, connect with me personally. This connection matters.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been some examples of those who have done it very differently, may have started off that, but shifted. And so I'm kind of laughing inside because I have to do the same work that you're talking about right now. Now, I have a few other pieces I have to build within my business.
Mm-hmm.
before I'm ready for the next step. Uh, but we've intentionally not built the brand around us, and yet it's kind of happening anyway, right?
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
anyway. And we've gone down the routes of how do we build other coaches to then lead in this, and mixed results. Fantastic with some, others kind of like, hey, their advice, they hadn't really done it. It,
Right.
it it was only when I could talk with you again every quarter or something. That's when I got and I was like, oh, this is not going right. So
Right.
let's kind of unpack it and think about it together and push on it. Tell me why the ideas I share are stupid. So that way we'll come up with a good one, right?
All right. That
There's
sounds
lots of
great.
bad ideas. Let's just throw them out there. One, I think, is going back to the core strategic question: whom do we really serve? Who really do we serve? And what is it they most need to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
Then how do we help them accomplish it? And when we answer that without thinking about us as people, but really what's the key work, what's the changes it's bringing it about, then after we figure that out, then we can get into this: how are we organized to pull that work off? And how do
Mm-hmm.
we measure success? Because if we can measure success, that there was a different way of organizing to get the work done and it delivered what they most wanted, why wouldn't people buy?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so just kind of thinking about it again, and take yourself out of the role for a while, take everybody out of it, and just have your customers central for a moment and say, what do they most need? Isn't it a proven methodology along with confidence that we can move forward?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they buying a friendship with Mike and AJ? I need to know what the high value is really, because if it's a friendship with Mike and AJ, they better be paying whatever, some insane amount of the $100,000 premium
Mm-hmm.
on your current membership to have the
Mm-hmm.
personal touch.
Right.
Okay. Because then you'd be like, great, I can do the $100,000 thing. I've got 3 days a year that we spend time together in this special retreat, and we get to know each other. And my team actively, predictably, successfully moves them forward all the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you want to get out of it, make it a $200,000 one, then make it a $300,000 one until everybody's gone and they're all delighted with what they get before. No, anyway, I mean, that's one way of thinking about it.
Right.
But you've got a lot of people you've helped.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a path I'm thinking about. So this
Okay.
isn't the podcast stuff. This is my core business, right?
Yeah.
Path I'm thinking about, and I've started asking around. We've helped so many business owners successfully grow, exit, or be in a position where they're not needed, that
Mm-hmm.
love our community and come back and present and connect. I mean, they're coming on their own, right? On their own
Right.
dime to pay to hang out with these friends. We're like, you could come for free. We love having you around. And they're saying to me, boy, I'd love to do that. Don't they have the street cred too? Didn't they just build
Mm-hmm.
along this system, knock it out of the ballpark? What could I do to have this as a self-perpetuating community that uses the success people to come back and leave a legacy? Come back and leave a legacy. For them, it's a small touch here and there. It's very fulfilling. They've now
Mm-hmm.
helped 5 other businesses succeed. They'd only grown 1 or 2. Now they've helped
Mm-hmm.
5 in the matter of 18 months. That's really exciting for them, right?
Right.
Because they're not doing the labor. And they'll get tired of that, but there'll be others behind them, right? So that's one thing. And when I was looking at your stuff, I got the feeling that you have that kind of community,
Mm.
right? That kind of
Mm-hmm.
loyalty
Mm-hmm.
tied in it. Maybe I'm misreading them. Talk to me about that. Let's explore the idea of like, do they need the two of you, or do they just need battle tested people who believe in the same system that could bring it to them?
Yeah, no, I think you're onto something there for sure. I mean, if I, answer the question you said before about like what are they after? And I think the simplest way to explain that is monthly recurring revenue greater than expenses,
That's all
right?
they're after.
I
Oh,
mean, I think that's in
we could do
service to
this.
more things, right? But
Yeah.
like that's how they get there. Because that, as we explored earlier about our story about recurring revenue, that was us, right? We are tired of the how we're going to make payroll, how we're going to make it work, how we reinvest in our team. It wasn't until we adopted or really bought into the idea of recurring revenue and focused in on that things changed. But it's more than just wanting recurring revenue. It was having, I mean, the goal for us in our first year after we saw that report from our accountant was monthly recurring revenue greater than what our payroll expenses are.
Yes.
And
Yep.
and
That's the key.
it took us a little bit more than a year or so,
Mhm.
about a year to get there. And it was like once we got there, we're like, wow, this is awesome. And it has forever changed everything else we've done.
So that's the
And
core value you bring, and you
mhm,
have a way of doing that. My idea was probably a bad one. It's going to be one of those that blows up on you. It might work. It might be a terrible one. But the thought process that I went through to get there was first, I said, what is our desired end state? And second, what does our customer most need that can help us get to my desired end state, right? That they want to keep paying for so I can go and do the next level value add. I want to 10x, 100x my output, my care, my impact in the world. And where I'm at, I can't do that yet. I need to move to the next level. Great. So you feel the dissonance, and the customers, you see what they care about. Then, the next piece is to say, so what really are our strengths? What do we have that others just don't as well, or they're not pulling off well? And
Mhm.
then how do I leverage those strengths? Or are there some strengths I don't have yet that if I could build, we could get to? So, another example that was out there. You guys are great thinking about marketing. You can build content, you can do all these things. You know how to do things. Well, if we have we implemented some of the automation and system and processes into the operations, not the back end, but the front end. Uh, I really appreciated Covey was one of these that his face was there, right? People loved Stephen Covey back in the day.
Mhm.
And he still has a lasting effect. When his team went out, not Covey, when his team went out in different parts, they just played the Covey video that led right in perfect. And there he was talking with them, connecting right on the point that was set up well. And so he made himself automated in the very trainings and things that come in. He would come again. He would share this insight. He would bring this little guru thing, and then his guy was back in or gal was back in, and they were showing the steps and processes. And then he'd come and share the story and inspire them. And he wasn't at any of those things. He shot a dumb video, right? Like,
Right.
and his face and the brand perpetuated long after he was doing that work inside. He would still go and do certain projects out there, the ones that were interesting to him, and they paid between 50 and 100,000 a day or an hour speaking gig to have him show
Mhm.
up to do it. Not a bad deal.
yeah,
He
yeah.
only did passion projects. He was only doing things that had big impact because that's what he wanted to go to. And all the
Mhm.
rest of the business just said, well, these are the key points they need you. Can you put that in for us? And
Mhm.
so they used them. I watched Stephen videos in so many different situations. It made me laugh. And and when he came and presented to me and to a group of alum I was with, uh, he played some of his own videos because
He's
they
like, I'm
were
not going to
set up and
redo this
ready to
line.
go. Right? I'm not going to
That's
say this
classic.
again. Let's watch this.
That is
Anyway,
pretty classic.
that may be another way. Why? Because they
Right.
were expert at creating content and
Mhm.
packaging content. And so they used it to their advantage to
Yeah.
get the
Interesting you say
brand.
that. There's an event tomorrow that we were unable to attend, and earlier today we recorded the introduction for that, and it will be played at that event.
That's right.
So you're kind of already onto something here.
Yeah.
So anyway, just think, what are my skills? What are my strengths? What weaknesses do I have? What do I need to build differently? And I like to use a strategic time, just pull away from everything else and say, here's our future state. Let's build it. What does it
Mhm.
look like here? And it has to be a strong enough draw. Like the pandemic was pushing you over, you're sick of it, and it gave you that push. Well, when we don't have the push, you need to have your vision so powerful of what you want to be and do that you're just insanely impatient to make the change.
Mhm.
And so you can intentionally build the future. And it may look different than you think. There may be parts of this business that move with you
Mhm.
that are so essential, or a few individuals, especially, who come and
Yeah.
help you do your next thing. And you want to think about that too. You want to plan that out. And I love that time off. And then as fast as you want to move, you may be doing time off every month, or maybe time off every quarter, depending on how fast you want to get there, to say, okay, what's the next step? Let's go build it. Let's
Mhm.
go
Yeah.
build it. How do I work myself out of this role? How do I do this in a way that doesn't keep my customers happy, but thrills them because they're getting better service? Let's reimagine this, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, hopefully that's a start
Yeah,
in your
I like
thinking.
that. I like that a lot. I think there's plenty of opportunity for us to do that. We've got some very core training, a lot of which is recorded, but then we've got other campaign type stuff that Mike and I are really good at coming up with new campaigns, and like one will work and then we're like, let's never use that again, right? We're going to come up with another one later. And I think if we would focus more on how can we reuse some of this stuff rather than reinvent stuff that
Either
could create,
reuse it or start trusting your team. Here, I'm sorry, I'm going to show you one last one.
yeah.
Co-author some things.
Mm-hmm.
Get team members of yours to co-author a book, a
Mm-hmm.
series, a whatever, and so you're starting to introduce people, and you're sharing your credibility
Right.
until they start to be elevated in the eyes of everyone around you. And so I've seen that work. I worked with he was the world's guru in strategic human resource and leadership,
Yeah.
and he had people co-author with him, and they were parts of the team. Then they were out in front of people, an author on the book with, so and so. Like, whoa, he's a big deal. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't, but he was trusted now. So either in video things and whatever, how do we start putting their faces in with us, share the stage more, and begin to build that? So that's a slower way, but also another way. So I'm going to
Yeah.
shut up. I've got
Really
ideas that I have to implement still. And so
good.
until I do, what
Nice.
am I talking about?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think each of those ideas, I can cite specific examples of where I've seen people in the coaching space leverage those. Like I know that like Russell Brunson, for example, not so different of a story. Like the guy synonymous with ClickFunnels for many years, and it seems interesting to see the moves he's made lately. But he's very much a fan of facilitated content, right?
Mhm.
Where there is the recording of him doing the intro, and then they cut away to a clip from a conference that was 2 years ago, and then he comes back and catches the clip. But what you don't know, or maybe people know and they don't care, it's just the intro was recorded and the clip obviously was recorded because it's a different time. But it's like being able to leverage some of those experiences.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway, I'll leave that be. But uh, hopefully there was some value that was found out, and
Yeah.
the most important one to me is time away, a process where we know where we're headed or we get clear about that, and engaging the right members of the team to make the plans and begin to execute. Test and move, test and move, test and move, but intentionally build that next move, because the impact you can have is so much greater. Even though you're having so much impact today, it's so much
Mhm.
greater when we learn to add value at a new level again. So anyway, we'll leave that be. Thank you. I'm both
Yeah.
AJ and Mike. Thank you so much for being on the call today. Really appreciated it. And for people who want to get in touch with you and learn how to really, you know, I don't know what you'd call it. You'd be like pour on the fuel on their growth for their agencies. How would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Head over to agencycoach.com. There's a link to a bunch of different resources there if you're on the agency side of things. And if you're not, just say hello. You can find me on Instagram at Mr. Mike Schmidt.
Fantastic. Thanks so much again to both of you. To all you listeners, if you found value as I did, please like, share, get it to other seven-figure business owners so they too can benefit. And until next time, keep striving, keep growing, keep learning, and keep caring.